Welcome home, Raiders. Tonight, we have got some big stuff happening in Hearthstone and Heroes of the Storm. Just had the Western Clash. We just had a little expansion drop. We'll talk all about metas and competitions and clashing and all sorts of things as Convert to Raid presents BattleNet Sports. Welcome to BattleNet Sports, everybody. My name is Pat Crane. I am your host, and tonight we will be talking to Jocelyn Moffat about some HCT action, some Hearthstone from Germany, especially with the new expansion right now. A lot of things are kind of up in the air. We'll see where things have at least initially landed with this new expansion. And some big surprises happening over in Heroes of the Storm world with HGC. The Western Clash did not turn out as expected. And we'll hear more from Jules Scott starting right now. We're back talking HGC, and there was a lot of HGC action, especially considering that the EU and the NA have clashed. And here to tell us all about it is Jules Scott. Jules, hello.
Hello.
And of course, you know Jules from Nerf This, and also you have a new thing now too, right?
I do. I mean, if I didn't do enough Heroes of the Storm, I am doing another podcast about Heroes of the Storm, and this one's a solo cast. So I'm doing, it's called Heroes News with Jules Scott in collaboration with HeroesHearth.com. And premise, 10 minutes or less, get your Heroes News, get on with your life. We're talking about HGC, patch notes, open division, and an interview with a pro, a caster, or a community personality every week.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very, very nice. All right, well, let's talk a little bit of Western Clash because that just happened, and there were some maybe surprises in the mix.
A lot of surprises.
Right.
It was a great weekend of HGC because there's a rivalry. There's a big one between EU and NA. I mean, it's pretty much across all eSports.
Right.
It's just kind of how it goes. But this faced off the top 4 teams from NA and from EU. And so you got 3 days of action seeing who was going to come out on top. And the face-off the first day was, of course, all 4 games, EU versus NA. And so all of us NA fans sat there super poised, hoping that our best hopes were going to come through. And it didn't look good. It didn't start so well for us. I mean, Heroes Hearth Esports was definitely expected to do well, and they fell to Team Leftovers, which was one of the biggest surprises of the tournament. For many reasons. They were the number 4 seed from EU, and they just barely squeaked their way in there. And they were an open division team as well, so they worked their way up through the open division to get into HGC. There wasn't a huge expectation for them, and they just kind of came out of nowhere. And they dropped Heroes Hearth 2-0 into the lower bracket. And the same thing with Tempo Storm. Tempo Storm got knocked down. The only team from NA that stayed in the upper bracket, in the winner's bracket, is Team Freedom. Which was kind of weird.
Freedom.
I know.
What's going on?
So we went 1-3 for the winners. And that first day, we were kind of like, okay, well then there were 2 losers matches after the 4 initial matches. You had Heroes Hearth facing off against they were a Team Liquid was their opponent, and they won that. But Tempo Storm got eliminated.
Wow.
And it was just this, like, we couldn't even believe it. We all kind of sat there and just said, what the hell just happened?
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah. So Tempo Storm went out in 7th and 8th place, and Team Liquid also. So that was like the first day. Insane.
Where do you go from there?
Well, what you do is you go to day 2.
Yeah. Usually after day 1, you go to day 2. Yep, you're right.
So true. And then you get to see your NA teams get eliminated in 5th and 6th place. So Heroes Hearth and Team Octalysis are out. Team Freedom wins again and beats Leftovers, who beat Heroes Hearth, sending them to the lower bracket. So now Freedom gets a top 3 finish, and we're all going, what? Like, all of our other teams are gone. Freedom is now the top 3. This is awesome. And then Leftovers just turned on the gas, and they literally plowed their way through the lower bracket to basically make it to the end. And this was a team that nobody expected to see anything, including them. Like, every interview, they'd just be like, we didn't expect to get this far, so we're just having fun.
Nice.
It was pretty funny. So tons and tons of fun. So day 2 was pretty exciting. You see the top 4 come out, and then it's Championship Sunday. And it was like, if there's a VOD that you want to watch from this tournament, you need to watch it. It's between Method and Leftovers in the lower bracket semis, I think it was, the semifinals.
Okay.
That game was insane. It was a 3-2 reverse sweep.
Oh,
just beyond. It was so good.
I always love those.
They were so good.
So good.
And you were just like, Leftovers are sitting there just kind of doing the same thing. We don't expect to be this good. We don't expect to go this far. And then they just kept winning, and then they kept winning. And I am literally out and about. I have like my iPad with me listening to the games while I'm out doing errands, going, what is going on? Like, what is happening? This is amazing. Really, really good VODs to watch. And then that was about it for the excitement.
That was it.
That was it. Leftovers got into the finals, like up against Team Dignitas.
Yep.
Dignitas is the beast. Yep. They are the ones that everybody expected to make it to the finals. And they did a clean 4-0 against Leftovers. It was
just crushed
kind
them.
of it was anticlimactic. Like,
right. Well,
I was out there reading Reddit, and they were just like, "Yeah, this kind of." I'm like, "Yeah."
Well, but I mean, what do you expect? Team Dignitas 7-0, and you know they're just dominating completely.
Yeah, they didn't drop a single match the entire tournament.
Oh,
just breezed right through.
How dare they?
I know it's insane.
I mean, lose one on purpose at least.
Give somebody else a chance.
Right. Make somebody look good. They're just takers. They're not givers at all. Dang it.
Yeah. So this was their second Western Clash win of 2018. Right. They just came up super shy of winning the midseason brawl up against Gen G, and so they have their sights set on BlizzCon. They've never won BlizzCon. They want it. They want it bad. So they're going to be watching. I'm sure they're going to be watching the Eastern Clash this weekend, so that they get a sense of what's going on. Because Gen G, they're expected to win, but there's just so much going to happen from this Eastern Clash this weekend that I will be watching to make sure. So
now this is basically, kind of going towards BlizzCon like you were talking about. So we're looking at Gen G. Are there any other teams that are looking particularly sharp over on the eastern side of the world? Because I know that we don't talk about it a lot over here at all.
Yeah.
So, I mean...
No, it's fine. I mean, really what it is this is China versus Korea going up against just the same kind of format like EU versus NA.
Yep.
And you're going to see probably a very, very strong dominance of Korea, not so great with China. They could surprise us. But like all 4 of Korean's teams are just so good. They're in that point where you're just like, any one of them could be in the top if one of them decides that they have a bad day.
Right.
So you've got Gen G, there's Tempest, Ballistics, and Team Blossom. They're the possibilities that you can see. So I mean, I'm going to put my money on Gen G, but I really want to see some stuff come out from this that wouldn't be like a Dignitas like crush. I don't think we're going to get that. I don't think we're going to get that from this tournament.
So let's just do like a BlizzCon prediction thing. Let's assume that Gen G gets in there and Dignitas, of course, and let's say Hearthstone, Heroes Hearth eSports, and the big 3 from the big different regions. obviously Heroes Hearth is going to lose. Do you think that's a thing that's going to happen?
Damn it, Pat.
And then,
I mean, yeah, you're right. It's just they're oh well, they would have, I think, more of a chance to get through to Dignitas having more experience playing them.
okay.
The Korean meta is so different. They have fewer opportunities to actually learn and play against it. It's I mean, never say never. There could be rabbits out of hats that we don't even know about yet.
Sure.
But it's going to be. I think you're probably right.
So in a heroes battle between Gen.G and Dignitas, who wins in your eyes or in your mind right now?
At this particular moment,
yes.
It's still Gen.G.
Yeah, probably. They're pretty dominant.
They're insanely good, but Dignitas, it has so I was reading this article recently, and it was talking about how this team has kind of become a hive mind. They are able to just predict each other's actions without even having to think about it anymore. And that only comes from time and practice and lots of success of doing what they're doing. Between now and BlizzCon, we're going to have different metas show up. We're going to probably have maybe a new hero or two. So you just never know. You never ever know what's going to throw into there. But I mean, if I were to predict the finals right now, it would be a rematch, Gen.G versus Dignitas. And I was rooting so hard for Dignitas to win at the mid-season brawl, and they came within one game of doing it. So
it's so tough.
The potential's there.
Korean esports are just leaps and bounds beyond what NA has done over the last, I don't know, a few years, I guess, because I mean NA is pretty. It feels like NA is pretty new to the scene, to coming to the pros, right? I mean, to actually putting in the work and doing all the things, and Korea's just blasts everybody away because they've just been at it for 15 years. Just doing,
it's a work ethic thing.
Yeah.
It's a support thing. The structure behind Korean esports is so different than it is for North America. I think people are still coming around to accept the fact that esports is a viable professional thing. People can be a pro being an esports player, whereas in Korea it's revered.
They have superstars over there.
Exactly.
National superstars in video games. I love it. All right.
Yeah.
Anything else that we need to know about Eastern Clash? What time does it start? It starts, it's this weekend, right?
It is. It starts this Thursday evening at 8:00. It's being played in Korea, so your times are going to be really whacked out, especially unless you're a night owl and you stay up all night.
Right.
So it is this weekend, is Thursday through Sunday, and then the following week, starting the 24th, is when EU and NA resume this part 2 of Phase 2.
Awesome. All right. Well, we will look forward to hearing back from you on Eastern Clash and moving into the rest of Phase 2. Jules, Scott, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon.
See you guys.
Let's talk a little HCT. Here we have Jocelyn Moffat, of course, from The Angry Chicken and many other shows and streams. Hello, Joss.
Hello, Pat.
Now, we had a little bit of an expansion in Hearthstone recently.
Just a little one. Yeah.
Not sure if you're aware. It's magnetic. That's all I can say about it. But then we had HCT Germany hot on its heels. And I'm kind of curious as to how the competitive side of Hearthstone is doing with the new expansion.
Well, it wasn't as wild, wacky, and crazy as we thought that it might be, mostly because the players only had 3 days to test before they actually had to submit their decks and then go play in HCT Germany. So there weren't very many new decks. It was all stuff that we'd mostly seen before, with a couple of exceptions, but Druid was brought by every player, so kind of what we thought was going to happen happened. Druid got some more powerful cards. In particular, they got the It's somebody's floop, anyways. Floblobnius floop or something.
Right.
Thank you, Hearthstone, for naming your cards this, by the way. It makes my job so much easier.
Sure.
But yeah, so because they got floop, Malagos Druid actually became much more reliable because you weren't just relying on popping your Twig of the World tree at the right moment. You could play Malagos out on a turn, and then either they can't deal with it, or if they can deal with it, then you have the 4-mana Floop to play the next turn with the same spell effect on it. So it just made the Malagos Druid a little bit more consistent. So 12 out of the 16 players brought it to HGC Germany. Everybody brought some kind of Druid, but Malagos was pretty much the only deck that almost everyone seemed to agree on. So I expect we'll see more Malagos Druid going forward. I mean, it didn't lose anything, that's for sure. It gained some extra help that it didn't really need, to be honest. But yeah, so we're going to see a lot more Malagos Druid. We saw a lot of it at HGC Germany. We also saw a lot of Giggling Inventor, which was a really interesting addition in this expansion. We kind of thought that it would probably be pretty good because the Fungal Mancer was kind of a sleeper of its expansion, and it has a very similar effect. It's a 5-mana card. It's not a great body, but the effect is very powerful. And the Giggling Inventor, again, 5 mana, not a great body, but it summons 2 Annoyatrons, and it's enough to kind of stall the game a little bit. So where Fungalmancer was potentially more of a board-centric aggressive card, Giggling Inventor is much more of a kind of like slow the game down, give your opponent something to get through. Those 2 Divine Shields on some taunts are really annoying to get through.
I have run into that in regular play, and let me tell you, not a fan. Not a big fan.
There is something you can do about it, though. You can run Mossy Horrors, which is a Witchwood card. It's a 2/7, and it destroys every other minion with 2 or less attacks. So you can basically, on turn 6, wipe out your opponent's Giggling Inventor. So Mossy Horror is now seeing play at an expansion after it was launched, because nobody was really playing it before.
Well, I got to get that one now. I think I have to craft that one.
Yeah, I had to craft it too because it just wasn't seeing play. The only thing that was possibly being teched for before was to deal with Spreading Plague. But even then, we were seeing the Void Rippers over Mossy Horrors for tech against Spreading Plague. So now that Giggling Inventor is neutral and is in a lot of combo decks that are just trying to get to their late game stuff, Mossy Horror was one of the most played epics in HGC Germany.
Wow. That seems, I mean, it's great. That's great. I don't know. I don't know what to say.
I always like when new strategies kind of allow older cards, and now Mossy Horror only came out 1 expansion ago, but I like when there are cards that never really saw competitive play are being brought to the forefront as really good tech cards. I like to see that happen. So we're definitely seeing that with Mossy Horror. So we'll see what else happens later on, because we are still right at the very beginning of the expansion, but
right. Now let's talk about the players a little bit. Now that we've talked about the play, how did that whole thing round out? How did we round out the top few folks there?
So actually, we saw Tice getting really far in the tournament. Tice made it to the top 4. He was actually streaming the morning of the second day, and he was really excited. I love Tice. He's one of those like super nice guy players that you always want to see do well. But yeah, so he ended up in the top 4, and he brought a mage deck that was kind of a new idea in this expansion. It was very aggressive mage, which we've seen aggressive builds before, but this one was really centered around spell damage, which is really interesting because we haven't really seen players make use of spell damage all that much. But over the last few expansions, we've gotten a few cards that have spell damage on them, like Black Cat, and we're seeing more and more spell damage being played because Mage has actually got a card called Shooting Star, which is very, very powerful against other aggressive decks because you can play a spell damage card, a spell damage minion, and then play your Shooting Star, and you can clear off your opponent's board. So that's really good in a meta like this one, where Odd Rogue, Odd Paladin, and Heal Zulok are very popular. It allows the mage to not lose too much tempo and damage, and also, you know, stop their opponents from getting too much on board. So
I have also run into this card in regular play. Are you a fan of this one?
When
it's against me, no, I am not a fan of this one either. I am not a fan of Hearthstone.
Not at all? Aww.
Not at all. Actually, the first time I went, Oh, wow. That's really cool. He just hit me for a lot. Wow. That's pretty neat. So yeah. Mm-hmm,
But yeah, so we did see the kind of spell damage aggro mage take Tice pretty far, which was really interesting to see. And then we also saw Trek, who was our eventual winner of the tournament. We saw him bring an odd warrior, which again is really, really interesting. I believe it was actually banned in the finals. People just didn't want to play against it.
Wow.
It's basically like just super duper control-y. That's all you want to do is just control. So it's the one that basically gives you tank up right at the very beginning of the game.
Yep.
And it just wants to control everything, gain a bunch of armor, and people just didn't want to play against it. So the other decks that we saw do really well in the tournament were Shudderwalk Shaman and, like I mentioned, Heal Zulok. That I think we saw Heal Zulok maybe 2 or 3 tour stops ago. It was something that came out of Asia and really has just caught fire. It's doing well on ladder. It's doing well in tournaments. It's very, very difficult to beat. If they get the start that they need, they're often, beating you by turn 4 or 5, maybe.
Right.
So yeah, it's a very, very, very powerful deck.
Cool. Very cool. Now, as far as, so this weekend we have Buenos Aires HCT stop. Do we know anything about that? Are we seeing any move in the meta, or in the decks that are coming around now?
Well, I've only been able to find 4 deck lists because I couldn't find there's no central published bracket yet.
Sure.
But a couple of the players did tweet out what they're playing. So surprisingly, we're seeing a kind of taunt big druid from a lot of the players. Amnesiac seems to be the only one, or is the only one of the decks that I could find that's bringing Malagos Druid. Although I imagine that once the rest of the deck lists are out, it's going to be a lot more popular than 1 in 4. I think we're probably going to see an even split. If some players are making the read that Taunt Druid is going to be a thing, then I still expect a kind of 50-50 split between Mally and Taunt. Other than that, we're seeing a good split, some heal zoos, some even locks. So people still haven't decided what the best tournament deck is for Warlock. But variety is always a good thing. We're also seeing some Death Rattle Hunter lists, which I think is really cool because I think I've been saying this for a couple months now, but I really like playing the Egg Hunters. I think they're really, really cool. And there's been a couple of new additions into the Death Rattle Hunter decks. So it's only getting more powerful. The Spider bot, I think, or Spider Tank bot. I can't remember what it's called, but basically it's a 3-mana 2/2 Hunter minion that has a death rattle that destroys a random enemy minion. So it works really well in the Hunter deck because it's a little piece of removal. It basically has a built-in deadly shot. And since you're already running things like cubes and play dead and all that kind of stuff, you already have ways to activate your death rattles that don't necessarily involve killing your minion, which means you can have that one minion can deadly shot a few different minions on the other side of the board, and it helps you gain control again back as a hunter. So I think the Death Rattle Hunters are really, really good, really, really interesting. One thing that we haven't seen anybody bring in, at least from the decks that I found for HCT Buenos Aires, is that we haven't seen any priest decks, and priests have some of the most interesting combos right now in the game because they have the option to go with either a Mechathune combo. They seem to be out of all the potential Mechathune decks, Druid and Priest are the, I guess, easiest combo, we'll call it.
Okay.
And so Mechathune is again new in this expansion. And Mechathune is the 10 mana 10/10 that if you have nothing else on your board, if you have nothing in your hand and nothing in your deck and it dies, then you win. So it's very similar to the Knights of the Frozen Throne, the Paladin Death Knight, where you had to get all 4 of the Horsemen of the Apocalypse and then it just automatically killed your opponent through any amount of armor.
Right.
We did see a Mechathune Priest at HGC Germany, but it wasn't running the more refined combo that we're seeing coming out of players now. So it's a really interesting combo. There's a lot of, again, like I said, same idea as Mossy Horror. There's a lot of cards that hadn't seen play, like Ticking Abomination and Coffin Crasher, haven't seen play up until now, but they're all part of this crazy Mechathune combo. So we might see some of that, but the big theme that we saw at HGC Germany was any of these big, crazy end game, try to draw your whole deck combo decks, including even Shutterwalk Shaman. It was in the winning lineup, but wasn't as successful for other players. So any of these, like, try to make it all the way to the end decks are not really performing that well. They're getting run over before they can actually complete their combos. There's also, in Warlock specifically, an interesting card. It's the Demonology Project, I believe it's called, but it basically takes 1 minion in your hand and 1 minion in your opponent's hand and changes them into random demons. So you're able to disrupt a lot of these combo decks, which is actually one of the things that happened over in HCT Germany. So yeah, there is some counterplay to these combo decks, including just being crazy super aggressive. And so especially with Tice doing so well with his mage deck, I think we're going to see a lot of aggression. I think we're going to see like combo lineups and aggressive lineups. I don't think we're going to see too much straight up control in this HCT Buenos Aires coming up this weekend, but
okay. Well, and
we shall see.
And if we don't see much movement there, we should see a little bit more refinement when it comes to the next thing, which is going to be DreamHack in Montreal, which you are going to as a worker bee, not as a player.
Yes,
so.
I'm not playing at HCT in Montreal, but I will be at DreamHack. So if you guys are going to be there, please do tweet me and let me know, and hopefully we can meet up because it's going to be an awesome event. I'm really excited.
Does that when does that start? It's September 7th. Is that it?
It is. Yes, September 7th, 8th, and 9th.
Okay. All right. Great. So the weekend after Labor Day for those guys that are in the States.
Yes. Hey, we have that up in Canada too.
Oh, okay, all right. I'm not sure. It's usually they're off in timing and stuff like that. I don't know what's going on. And we also have the Hearthstone Global Games are going to be picking back up next week.
Yeah.
Right. So we have week 4 starting next week on that stuff. We've got a lot of great Hearthstone action coming up. So that'll be probably the next few weeks after Buenos Aires and before we get into Montreal, right?
Exactly. I'm really looking forward to it. There's, I think, a lot of innovation that's going on right now. This is the most exciting part of the expansion, is when everybody's playing all the crazy things and trying to refine them into decks that actually work in competitive play. So this is the time, guys. This is the fun.
This is where people experiment and die or win really big. So either way.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Joce, we will check in with you later on all of this different stuff as far as Buenos Aires. And before we get to Montreal, we'll make sure to check in with you and see how it all shapes up. Jocelyn Moffat, thank you so much for joining me, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me, Pat.
And that is going to do it for this week in BattleNet Sports. I want to thank Joce and Jules for dropping by and dropping some knowledge on us about all these great competitions and the metas and the blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. Just a quick note on StarCraft 2. Not much is going on right now because everybody is trying to qualify for Montreal, which happens at the beginning of September. So be looking for that. We'll as we approach that, we'll start talking more and more about that stuff. Now, if you guys want to chat with us about anything, feel free to drop by converttoraid.com. That's where we have all of the audio, the video, the different things in the Convert to Raid podcast network, the different things, the different shows there from Joce and from Jules and Thist and the regulars, not only at BattleNet Sports, but over at BattleNet News as well. We have a bunch of their shows. Feel free to peruse. It's all over at converttoraid.com. And if you're looking for a home for your new Alliance character in World of Warcraft, we also have a guild over there as well. So you can find all of the guild info over there. It's a small guild, only like 7,700 characters. I just checked today. That's why I know. All right. For all of the guys at Convert to Raid, we'll see you next time. Until then, bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.